Welcome to Aston Means Business. I'm Steve Dyson, the journalist presenting this regular podcast for Aston Business School. We've turned this podcast's attention towards how small businesses, known as SMEs, are coping with the economic shutdown caused by the coronavirus pandemic. This special series is called Aston Means Business, SMEs Dealing with COVID-19. We're talking to businesses who are taking part or who've previously taken part in Aston Centre for Growth's programmes. We're giving them a voice to discuss their challenges, share their experiences and explain how they're dealing with the crisis. We're also interviewing some of Aston Business School's top academics and other experts, getting their valuable insight, analysis and advice for SMEs. Please bear with us as all recordings are carried out remotely, online, to make sure we conform to the government's current stay-at-home advice. In today's episode, we're going to discuss how to deal with potential mental health and wellbeing issues caused by COVID-19. Joining me online now is Rosie Ginday, MBE. She's the Managing Director of Miss Macaroon. Hello to you, Rosie.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me on the podcast today.
No problems at all. And Rosie, tell us a bit more about Miss Macaroon. Where are you based and what do you do?
So I run Miss Macaroon. It's a community interest company and we sell French macaroons. They're premium, gluten-free, beautiful desserts that we sell to lots of corporate customers like Google, Instagram and Facebook, and wedding customers, and through our online shop and our Macaroon and Prosecco store in the Great Western Arcade. And we then reinvest 100% of our profits in providing training and jobs for long-term unemployed young people, especially young people with mental health issues or on the autistic spectrum, or they might be lone parents or ex-offenders or care leavers. And we've been going for about 9 years now, and we're mainly based in Birmingham, but we deliver across the whole of the UK and Europe.
Fantastic. It sounds a great business, and I know it quite well because you and I have met before, and I've tasted your macaroons, and I can tell people listening that they are gorgeous. So it's good to speak to you again. Rosie, just remind me, how many staff numbers do you have now?
So we're a really small team. There's only 8 of us.
Okay, that's quite a large team for someone like me who just employs myself. So 8 people. Now, tell us, how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected your operations? How are you running things? Where are your staff, etc.?
It's affected us hugely. So we had to shut our Macaroon and Prosecco store down when the guidelines came out from the government, so a couple of Fridays ago. And just before that, we'd actually stopped one of our team working because he was a little bit higher risk. And we'd upped the hours for the rest of the team just to kind of make up for that. So there was a bit of understanding there and a huge amount of flexibility, but also just kind of talking to that team member and making sure that he understood why we were doing it, and he's actually really grateful for it. And then in terms of our production facility in Aston in Birmingham, we have closed that down. It's only open for dispatching orders. We've lost 95% of our sales. Corporate orders are our biggest customer segment, and exhibitions have been cancelled, new product launches, graduations, so the vast proportion of what we do has stopped, but we are still delivering across the UK for orders. Kind of, it's mostly B2C now.
And how many staff have you still got on, or are you furloughing anyone, or how are you dealing with it staff-wise?
Yeah, so we have furloughed all of our production team, our training team and our retail team. So it's actually just myself and our marketing executive. And we're, just keeping in touch with our trainees and having regular calls with them. And we're just increasing what we're doing and testing a few new ideas just to make sure that we are continuing in this period of incredible change, but also just looking at what else we can do. So whether that's taking our training online, or I do a lot of speaking events talking about social enterprise and supporting teams, and how we can do that in this period of flux where lots more teams are continuing to work and trying to keep that team mentality going and that motivation going, but through a completely different medium.
Yeah, I want to come on to talk to you about that. But first of all, let's just focus on that huge change for everyone, from the boss to managers to employees to trainees, from working to home to being furloughed. The many ways that people are adapting, it's quite a shock to the system and brings up all sorts of mental health and well-being issues, doesn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, these kind of changes would take years and years for companies to implement, but we've had to do it in a matter of days. Although the rolling news, the constant updates on numbers of cases and deaths has a negative impact actually in helping our people to make those changes quite quickly in a positive way. It really did help because it wasn't something that was been done to them by management. It was something that they were really aware of and quite worried. So, when I was picking up the phone to them and talking to them about what little information we had, they felt like we were all in it together and we were all making the decisions together, which was really helpful.
No, that's good. And in terms of your staff now at Miss Macaroon, and as you say, some of them are furloughed, one or two of you are still ongoing. How are you helping them to adjust and keep on top of their mental health and wellbeing issues?
So we've worked together to create a team weekly schedule. So although there's only two of us in that team now, we've had a period where we've gradually reduced that, and people have been staying in touch. So we have a 9 o'clock half-hour chat, and it's a video call. And we have a 2 o'clock tea break. Again, that's a video call, and then a 5:30 half-hour chat, just checking up on everyone on what's gone on within their day. And for all our furloughed team, that's also open to them. We had a bit of a switch up session. So anyone that wanted to get involved in learning about somebody else's job, we just put a group project on, had a Zoom call, and just jumped on somebody's project that they're trying to kind of make some progress in. But just actually getting 3, 4, 5 people on it really made a difference in turbocharging where they would have been had they been doing it by themselves. So it was just really nice ways to break up the week, and maintain that connection between people, and that team working between people was really important.
And I guess for businesses listening, this is really important, isn't it? Because working physically alone, sometimes, like I am, in a small spare bedroom, or for other people in a garage or utility room, it can be quite a challenge because of the workspace and loneliness involved, can't it? It can potentially get quite monotonous.
It can do, and it can also be challenging on the other side. So if you've got kids, or you're caring for people, you've got to manage all of these conflicting priorities and demands on your time. So you're expecting of yourself, and your teams are expecting of you, that you'll still be working full time, but there has to absolutely be a degree of flexibility. And for the first week, for everybody, it was just okay, everyone's turning up. That's amazing. That's all we need. Just do as best as you can, working on this one single task, and make as much progress as you can. But we're all going through this change, and lots of our family situations, there's a huge amount going on as well. So we have to be really understanding of our whole selves, and what we bring. When you walk in the front door of the office or wherever you work, you can leave your outside life kind of at the door. It's much easier to do, but actually when you're at home, it's just constantly there. So whether that's worries about a family member working in the NHS, or somebody that's actually come down with the virus, or just normal everyday things like worrying about your kids and taking care of them. It's very hard to switch off from that when you're working in the same space.
Yeah, no, I get that, and I also had a quick look at your post that you put up on LinkedIn about some of the ways that you've coped with that, and some of the ways that you perhaps suggest other companies can. And you've already used one of the phrases, the switch up session. There was another one that you used as well, the get creative strategy session. Just talk us through that, because I'm hoping that our listeners, other businesses, might get one or two ideas for themselves through some quite clever terms you give in sessions, which make people think differently.
Yeah, it was just a really nice way to pull all of the teams together, but also some of our Macaroons that make a difference course trainees and graduates, so that we're all on the same page and we don't lose sight of what we're here to do, which is to help young people to get back into work. And it's just that we use the medium of selling macaroons and making macaroons to achieve that goal. So it was really about getting everybody on a Zoom call and talking about our feelings, which can be a bit airy-fairy in the business world. But it's just important to recognise that actually it's a really scary time. And with all of this change, we're all experiencing it in a slightly different way and with a different perspective. So it was really important just to kind of have that check-in right at the beginning of the day and give ourselves the perspective of actually this young person is from a completely different background and has other pressures. So let me think about it from her perspective. Or, one of our retail team members still has to write her dissertation, even though she's worried about friends and family and she has no access to other colleagues on her course. So just kind of having us step out of our own roles and our own place in the world was just really helpful. And then having a very open conversation about what the world looks like was great to get people's opinions on what we could do as a business. It wasn't really an exercise in ideas creation for new products or new services. It was just a way to get people together. And the way that we chose to kind of frame that conversation was around what coronavirus and these changes mean for the business. But it was just a good way to get different teams talking to one another and sharing their experiences, which was really exciting and inspiring for the teams because we split them down into kind of the challengers and the champions. We had one team talking about, the worst case scenario, what could happen if we were in lockdown for, 6 months to a year. And then another team talking about, what are the positives of everyone kind of working from home and the connections that we can make and the space that we can give one another. And it was really, really positive for people to kind of have that insight to each other's thinking and that space to kind of process things in a slightly different way.
Yeah, I also read that you had a really interesting Get Creative strategy session where you even had one of your trainees coming up with a new view. And this is a really good idea, isn't it, to sort of potentially get some new ideas out of the same keeping people well sessions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you take yourself out of the confines of your very kind of fixed role and speak to people in other parts of the business and other stakeholders, it does get you a little bit more creative. And I think that's what that strategy session really helped everybody to do, just to kind of connect with each other in a different way and access a little bit more of their creativity in a different environment.
No, that's great. Now, just a couple of quick questions to end with you on, Rosie. Can people still get hold of your tasty products? If so, what's available and how can they get them?
Absolutely. So you just go onto our website, which is missmacaroon.co.uk, and you can purchase all of our products and we'll send them out to you the next day. So if you place your order before 2 p.m, we'll have it to you the next day before 6 p.m. We deliver Tuesday to Friday, bearing in mind that we will be closed for the bank holidays coming up, which will actually feel like just a regular day at the moment. But so we deliver all over across the UK as well.
That's brilliant. And last question, do you feel with what you're able to do with the government assistance, the furloughing, etc., do you feel that you're going to be able to bounce back when things start returning to near normality?
You've got to be positive as an entrepreneur. You've got to keep problem solving and put a positive spin on everything, so that you can keep moving forward. So it's had a massive impact on our sales and a huge impact on our ability to deliver training and support our trainees. But we'll absolutely get through this and keep moving forward.
Rosie Ginday, the Managing Director of Miss Macaroon, many thanks for joining us and best wishes to you and the wider company at this time.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Steve.
Keep safe.
You too.
I'm now going to talk to Dr Wladislaw Rivkin. He's a senior lecturer in the Work and Organisational Psychology Department at Aston Business School. Hello to you, Vlad. How are you?
Thank you, Steve. I'm fine. Thanks for having me.
No problems at all. Vlad, you heard my chat with Rosie Ginday just now. She's using regular contact calls and Zoom meetings with her staff with specific purposes at Miss Macaroon during these unusual times. She's finding that helpful. Is that helpful, and why is it helpful to keep people going like that?
I mean, if she says it's helpful, I can't argue with it, obviously.
That's true.
But on a more serious note, actually, there are explanations why this is helpful, especially in the realm of psychological motivation. We look at things like intrinsic motivation, or we call it self-determination. And we know that the satisfaction of basic psychological needs positively relates to intrinsic motivation. And these needs are the need for autonomy. So basically doing things at work which are autonomously chosen, the need for competence, so doing things at work which people are inherently competent in. And the final need, and this is where Rosie's action have quite a strong impact from my view, is the need for relatedness. So basically feeling related to each other. And obviously through self-isolation measures, what happens is that obviously we lose the satisfaction of the need for relatedness. So establishing regular Skype calls or staying in contact with employees or colleagues among each other can basically satisfy this need and therefore can increase motivation and well-being of people.
No, I can understand that, and it certainly sounds as if Rosie's experiencing that positively with her staff at Miss Macaroon. And just in general, whatever risks to people's mental health and well-being do you think are potentially being caused by the COVID-19 shutdown and the restrictions that everyone's having to cope with?
I think it quite strongly relates to what we refer to as self-control and self-regulation. So the basic idea that some or engaging in certain tasks requires cognitive or mental effort and or willpower, we also call it. And on that note, for example, if you look outside, the weather is nice. You maybe want to go out, you want to spend time outside, but obviously you can't because of quarantine measures. And this requires self-control or willpower to still stay inside, to not go out. The same applies to work-related self-control in the sense that once you transfer from working in your office where you have the technology set up, where you have certain processes, procedures, and suddenly your internet connection doesn't work well or your internet connection is not sufficient for the work tasks you do. And then you need to control impulses of anger to cope with it. The same applies to focusing on work when experiencing troubles at home. So, for example, I just had a Skype meeting today with a colleague, and his children came into the room. He had the Skype meeting, so he needs to control impulses, control emotions, still focus on the meeting. Somehow he arranged with his wife that she took the children for the duration. So you can see that there are quite a lot of factors which require ourselves to control ourselves when we are working at home. And this has a negative impact on employees' well-being.
Of course, no, I understand that. And of course, on top of all that, people are worried, aren't they, about layoffs, finance, health, their family. All those things come on top of working from home.
Absolutely, and obviously suppressing these worries, these emotions, this anxiety also necessitates or depletes resources. So basically, we need to still focus on our tasks. We need to still provide services, and at the same time, we are opening maybe internet pages where it says how many people passed away due to coronavirus. So on that note, it's very these things also require self-control. So basically, you have a situation where different sources or different demands deplete people at the same time.
I understand. So, with all those things in mind, Vlad, how can workers make sure they're looking after their mental health and well-being with all those different pressures hitting them?
So one thing we looked into is psychological detachment, for example. So psychological detachment implies that people shut off from work after they finish work. And psychological detachment is a recovery experience which has been demonstrated to relieve people from the negative effects of self-control at work by recovering their resources, basically refueling their energy, if you want to say so. And this becomes obviously much more difficult when people are at home, because if you're at work, you can go away from work. So at the end of the workday, you leave work and then you automatically detach. However, when you're at home, you actually can't leave your home to detach. So what can be helpful, for example, is to have certain setups which make detachment more likely. One is a room setup, in the sense that you have a certain room for your work, and it's a different room than for your studies. I mean, let's see if I completely understand that not everybody has the luxury to have a mansion with hundreds of rooms, but obviously if you can arrange a setup where you uh, work in another room, then you engage your leisure activities in. Another option could be also to set time boundaries. So, for example, to say, today I'm going to work from a certain time to a certain time, instead of having work boundaries in regard to tasks. Because we often, if we work from home, we tend to say, okay, I finished this task and then I finished work. However, if the task takes longer, obviously you overwork and you have less opportunity to detach. So these are some things people can do to make their home environment more suitable for work.
No, that's really useful. I'm sure that will be of interest to people listening. Finally, Vlad, I mean, we've talked about the worker there, and earlier on we listened to Rosie, who's a boss, with one or two ideas that she gave us about keeping in touch with people. But aside from that, what are your top tips for bosses out there wanting to make sure their staff are well whilst working remotely? How can bosses help?
So leadership is quite an important factor, and I think especially during crisis, leadership plays a particular role. So what we focused on in our research is the impact of servant leadership of employees' health and well-being. And servant leadership implies a leadership style where leaders try to facilitate the best versions of their employees, so satisfy employees' basic psychological needs. So therefore, leaders can engage in satisfying employees' needs for relatedness, as Rosie obviously does, but also facilitating or satisfying their needs for competence. So asking what types of tasks do they feel competent at, which types of these tasks or which of these tasks can be performed at home. And the same goes for autonomy. So, for example, asking employees uh, how they want to do work, giving them the opportunity to autonomously engage in work. And the final thing, which I find important for leaders, is communication. Uh, in this situation, having communication which is clear and precise can be very helpful, and especially refraining from communication which may cause insecurity or be ambiguous. I don't think, in light of the negative news from the media, we also need negative news from our companies about how dire the situation is. And being reminded constantly about this can have quite a negative impact on people. So therefore, engaging in positive communication and also being precise and not ambiguous can be helpful.
Oh, that's really good. Many thanks, Vlad. It's been really good speaking to you about this. And thanks there to both Dr Wladislaw Rivkin of Aston Business School and Rosie Ginday of Miss Macaroon, who've both joined us today. What they've both had to say about mental health and wellbeing is hopefully something SMEs will find useful in this latest podcast in our special series. We'll be back in the next few days with more case studies of how businesses are coping and with more crucial analysis and advice from academics and experts here at Aston Business School. Aston means business, SMEs dealing with COVID-19. Thanks for listening.